Hi, I'm Jamie Shapiro, and I'm an organizational psychologist and CEO coach. And welcome to another episode of Connected Culture. Today, I have the pleasure of getting to talk with Kumar, who, if you don't know him, you should, because he is the influencer of influencers. And I get to work with him on a regular basis and feel very grateful that we get to partner on all things social media. And today, we just get to have a great conversation. Welcome, and thank you for being here.
Thanks so much for having me. This is lovely.
No, thanks. All right. So, do I get to start asking questions, or you want to start asking questions?
I would love to start asking you questions
Okay.
because one, I got to experience you live for the first time today, and it was just so phenomenal to just see how you were able to get people to just emotionally connect with you. I work online most of the time remotely, so I'm curious, how do you connect? How do you create that kind of connection with people remotely?
Yeah. And it's so possible. Listen, there is this whole thing about being in person with each other that's pretty magical, and we get this human energy, but it can be accomplished online,
Yeah.
but it takes a lot more intentionality. And what I have found in our hybrid workforce and our virtual workforce is that literally we go from meeting to meeting without any of the natural connection that used to happen in the office, right? If you think about what an office environment looked like and we were in a meeting, people would kind of come in at different times and you just naturally flow into some type of human connection conversation. Now we click online, some videos are on, some videos are off, and like you dive right into business.
Right.
There's no pause to say anything, like a meaningful question and sometimes people are like, oh yeah, let's do a check-in question. And instead of asking like an actual connecting question, we get, what's your favorite flavor of ice cream? Which is fun. It's a fun question.
Icebreakers for the week.
Right? And then all of a sudden people are like, please don't give me another icebreaker question.
Yeah.
But if we ask questions like, how's your energy today? Or what's on your mind? Or is there anything you all need help with? And we actually create moments before we start the meeting for connection.
Yeah.
What we see is it creates more openness and engagement in a meeting, and that can be done in a virtual environment. But you have to think about it.
Yeah, I remember when I first had my first job, I actually used to go to an office and then, I'd go do my thing. I'd be doing these phone sales and then I'd take breaks and like talk to the receptionist from other friends and it'd feel nice. It would just make it a lot more interesting and fun. But then when you start just going behind a computer, sometimes it gets boring and it gets dull. And it's kind of like you're saying, like nowadays you have these Zoom meetings and people are like, oh yeah, what's your icebreaker for the week? And I don't know, it just feels like it feels a little forced.
It does. It feels a little empty.
So well, like what do I do as a CEO of a company? I have my staff. Some people are in different countries, some people are in the US. How do I like cultivate that, like getting people to interact with each other in that way?
Well, I think we have to start with, can we build a foundation of care for each other as human beings, right? We think that, oh, if we spend too much time on that, that's a waste of time. But really what our research shows is, no, actually, that's the foundation for team performance and healthy cultures. So it's about, how do you create moments with meetings? How do you create moments outside of meetings? How do you think about how you get people as human beings connected, even in different countries, talking to each other, sharing themselves? And that doesn't mean you need to share your whole personal life, but it does mean, like, can we know each other as people in order to do great work with each other? And we miss that. I think we've had this whole environment for far too long where it's like we're almost like robots getting work done instead of human beings getting work done.
Yeah.
Human beings thrive in connection. And so how do you start to think about building that in your workplace? And that's going to look different for every single person.
Right.
If you're an international company like you are, if you're mostly virtual, then you can think about creative ways for us to get to know each other and making space, or, inviting, because you are the leader and the CEO, invite people to do virtual coffees with each other. So often I'll be working with a team and say, hey, I want you to think about the person you know the least, the person that you're doing a lot of work with, but it might feel a little more transactional versus relational. Can you schedule a virtual coffee with that person? You both grab coffee, tea, whatever, and you don't talk about the work. You just talk about yourselves. Can you spend some time doing that? So those are like little ideas to create moments of connection and inviting that, because you as the leader, you set the tone and the culture. So if you never talk about this stuff, or you never say that this matters,
Right.
people don't prioritize it. But if you prioritize it, and that means you having virtual coffees with people
Right.
or whatever the
Right.
thing is that you feel is resonant for you, if you're not doing it, no one else will.
Wow, you're right. That's so true. Because it's like, otherwise everything just kind of feels transactional. And there's a lot of things I've been learning from you, just working with you. But like having that culture is really this invisible force that actually makes people care.
Yeah.
Because I've worked with a variety of different people that over time, in the beginning they're really good, but then over time they kind of start making all these mistakes and then they just kind of don't get into it. And
Yeah.
I just feel like, am I the only one that actually cares about doing it?
Yeah.
But I realized, reading your book, just getting deeper into your pool of knowledge, that it's a cultural issue.
Yeah.
And a lot of what we've been talking about recently has to do with AI and how so many people are scared.
Yeah.
And I think I saw you talk about something called like FOBO.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, fear of being obsolete.
Yeah.
Right. And unfortunately, our culture right now, whether you look at the media, whether you look at just the conversations that are happening within organizations, it's very fear-based. It's about how AI is going to take over all of your jobs and no one's going to have a job anymore and robots are going to run the world. And like I know that's a little extreme, but that's how it feels.
Yeah.
And it's putting us into complete hijack mode. It's putting us into a fear-based mode. And we've got to think about technology and AI in a very different way. How is it going to elevate people? How is this actually going to make it so we can prioritize connection and the human work and the leadership side? How are we going to use that as a way to help people thrive instead of talking about this in such a negative way? And you're seeing people shut down left and right and not adopt the technology because, or I was just listening to a podcast and literally people that were giving keynote addresses at college graduations.
Yeah. They
We're getting booed off stage because they mentioned AI.
Yeah. I think it was like Eric Schmidt.
Of artificial intelligence. Interesting.
And a lot of like big industry leaders started talking about it. They were getting booed.
It was crazy. Yeah. And that's because there's, college students are hearing it. Our workplaces are talking too much about it.
Yeah.
And we as leaders have to shift how we're talking about technology and how we're talking about AI. Because listen, the truth is, yes, there are jobs that are going to become obsolete because of the technology. But that means we have an opportunity to elevate those jobs and elevate those people into hopefully work that's more powerful and meaningful for them and not eliminate their role within the company.
Yeah, because I mean, I want them to use it. I want them to master it. It's in their best interest. But sometimes some people resist or they don't care as much.
Well, it's when people don't feel like they matter, then people are going to reject, right? We need to have a sense that we matter in the workplace to feel motivation. People don't do great work because you tell them to. They do great work because they know it deeply matters and they can see the impact. And part of our job as leaders is to talk about work in general that way and make sure that people see their impact. But also when we're talking about AI, we've got to start bringing in some of that, how they matter, how this is going to elevate them, how it's going to impact the work that they're doing, and ultimately the end user of that work.
Do you feel like it's like a carrot and stick thing, or is it something too radically different?
I think it's so much more about thinking about people first and how to enable people with technology.
So not even the carrot and stick.
I'm letting go of the carrot.
It's a human thing.
It's a human thing. It's like, how do we care for the human that is going to use this technology to elevate the work in themselves? We say we want people to adopt it, but then we use terrible language in order to. So it's like we're creating all this fear within organizations, and then we're like, no, use the technology, use it. I know it's pretty scary. It might totally eliminate your whole world and disrupt your life. And and the media is also saying that you're never going to be needed. Like there's so much.
It's like cashiers at the grocery stand, and then they're helping people use the automated machines.
Totally.
Like you're training your replacement right now.
Yeah.
That's kind of what it feels like when I'm trying to get them to do it. Even though that's not my intention. I know that's not most people's intention. Maybe some people, I'm not sure, but.
Yeah. I would think about, there are so many things for us as humans that are deeply human and can't be replaced by any technology.
Totally.
People have asked me, oh, Jamie, are you so worried that like AI coaching is going to take over? And I'm like, no, I'm not worried at all. I mean, yeah, it can enable, especially when I'm not there, but the human to human energy and connection is so deep and powerful. And when I look at this technology with AI, I'm thinking about how is that going to elevate more human to human connection? How is this going to make, like for leadership, for example,
Right.
how many leaders will tell you, gosh, there just aren't enough hours in the day? Never, ever did a leader say to me, you know, I have so much space today. I'm going to start journaling and just hang out. It doesn't happen, right? We're so strapped for time.
Right.
And what I think
Busy
about,
badge,
yeah, the
like
busy
you said.
badge, right?
Yeah.
People have the busy badge on. What I think that this AI technology is going to do is take some of that mundane work, the repetitive work, so that we can do more of the real work, which is leadership, connection, helping people just be at their best. And to me, when we start to talk about AI that way, it's like, ooh, I like that. I want, okay, let me see how I can start using this technology so that I can do more of the stuff that I love doing.
Yeah, I see that especially just in the social media space and the content creation space. Like AI does make things convenient or easy to make what's now called AI slop.
Yeah.
But I do believe we're going into a future of human led.
Yes.
So I could totally see, even with how organizations are built and scaled and grow, it does get rid of the mundane stuff, and then it kind of opens up space for more of the stuff that people like, the creativity, the judgments, the taste.
Yeah.
I'm huge on people that have good taste. I love that.
And it's so interesting. I've been thinking about like what is going to open up from having AI takeovers and stuff. And creativity has been one of the big things that I think there's going to be this new influx of just cool, creative thing that I don't think we've done enough of. We've been so logically based in our thinking for so long, and we've had to be. But if AI can take over all of that repetitive, logical stuff, and we can do just the real, like, creative, abstract things that only humans can do, I think that's so cool.
I don't think AI has like replaced it, which a lot of people kind of think that it does. Like, because if you try to get ideas from it, it doesn't work. The way I've understood creativity to be is, it's like you have a lot of different things, and then you make the connections of things that other people haven't made the connections of before.
Yeah.
It's kind of like what you're saying, when you went to physical work environments, you made these connections, things happened, things sparked. I think I heard recently about how Steve Jobs made it so that the bathroom was in a certain place so that different employees from different departments could, run into each other and have these moments occur.
Yes.
So I feel like we have to figure out how to make that happen
Totally agree.
online.
Yeah, we do have to make that happen online, and we haven't cracked the code yet.
No.
I mean, honestly, we've been at this hybrid virtual world work thing for a little while now, and I've seen some organizations do it successfely, and I've seen some organizations really fail at it.
The ones that do it really well, what would you say is the common denominator, or is there a button that you just press?
I know that's what we want to. Is like,
like what's
all
the
office,
one
all
thing?
hybrid. Which one? What we're finding, not just in practice but in research, is that in the middle is really the secret sauce, right? Giving people autonomy and flexibility, but at the same time creating really meaningful experiences where we're in person. And that looks different for every organization. Some organizations will do an in-meeting week every month. Some organizations have found, a certain flow where it's a couple days in the office, a couple days of hybrid work and virtual. But the problem is that sometimes organizations go into this and they're like, okay, we're all going to be in the office for these days.
Yeah.
And then you walk into the office and everybody's on a Teams call. You're like, whoa, what just happened, right? If we're going to actually prioritize human-to-human connection, we actually need to prioritize human-to-human connection, not all go into the office, close our doors, and get on Zoom or Teams, which happens, shockingly, like a lot. So intentionality, I know I say that word a lot, but intentionality around how do you cultivate the right environment, similar to what you said with Steve Jobs, right?
Yeah.
He intentionally cultivated the bathroom somewhere for that interaction.
Yeah.
That's the level that we need to be thinking about how we create hybrid work environments. And there's no easy button. There's only effort and energy that needs to go into that.
So you're saying people are kind of half-assing it?
Yeah, I'm saying people are half-assing it. That's exactly what I'm saying.
Wow. So it has to be in person. So even if it's if it's people that are remotely, you have to just kind of create these retreats or these events?
Doesn't have to. I mean, I think there are plenty of very successful companies that are 100% virtual,
Yeah.
and they don't get together in person, and they have found ways to build culture and connection in that virtual world. Lots of creative ideas coming out of that. What I find is that even if you're 100% virtual, if you can create moments where people come together, there's nothing that replaces that face-to-face. Not that you can't do a great job in virtual environments, but that face-to-face, getting to meet each other, like the 3D moment when you're like,
Yeah.
I didn't know you were that tall, or like, those
Yeah,
moments where
yeah.
you just,
Yeah.
you can feel someone's energy.
Right.
I think that's hard to replace. And so if you can cultivate moments that matter like that, I think that can be a really powerful addition.
I have friends that are leaders and then friends who are employees at different organizations, and I kind of get to hear both sides of it,
Yeah.
the different experiences. Obviously, some employees just prefer to work at home, whereas other leaders are trying to get people to come back to the office.
It's a real tension.
How is that balanced?
It's not. I mean, let's be honest, right? We all have preferences for how we want to work, and some of us are going to prefer being completely virtual, and some of us are going to be preferring completely in person.
Right.
That's why I say I think in the middle is better. I mean, any relationship, right? We have to make compromises. We have to meet somewhere in the middle.
Right.
We can't satisfy every single person's need and say, you know what, if you prefer to be at home and you prefer to be at the office, that's totally fine, because there's this whole thing called organizational justice. And when things feel unfair, that is an issue.
Interesting.
So it's really important that as we think about any policy we create within an organization, how do we create, a fair policy? How do we make sure that we are honoring as much as we can with flexibility, but we're also honoring, if we've decided that we are going to be in person, that it's not with like, oh, but all of these people, they don't have to be in person, and all these people, they don't have to be in person. Just this group has to be in person. That starts to feel unfair. And not to say there aren't cases, because every organization is different. There are cases where it's like, okay, this team actually needs to be virtual. I get that. But I do want people to think about that fairness factor when they're thinking about how they're creating policies around this.
So this kind of like, what was it called? Organizational justice?
Yeah.
And is this like an effect that people feel, or is it something that...
Yeah, it's something we study in our field quite a bit, and it has a lot of different components. You can think about like, how are the policies and procedures? What about compensation? How about the distribution of information or compensation? Like, you can think of a lot of different places where organizational justice matters.
I see.
But one of the issues I have seen with this hybrid work environment is people get really frustrated when things feel unfair, when people get exceptions and they don't, right? So if you prefer to work from home, but I make you come into the office, but Joe over here, he prefers to work at home and he gets to stay at home. Okay, what's going on? Like, then you start to feel like that's not fair. And then that motivation, that care that you were talking about, you want people to have, that starts to get compromised.
So it kind of erodes, if you will.
It erodes trust in the organization.
So how do you, like, because a lot of the clients that you have companies with thousands of employees at a time.
Yeah, I would say an average of 60,000 to 120,000 people.
Gosh.
Yeah, a lot of people.
How do you deal with the mass amount of dynamics that happen in these companies?
Yeah, there's, especially when we're talking, I mean, well, there's a lot of dynamics that happen in large companies, and they're big systems of people.
Right.
So it is harder, right? The bigger the system, the harder it is. But a lot of what organizations do is they create the higher level type of policy around this. And they empower their leaders to make good decisions around it as well. So it's like, okay, this is what we say as an organization is really important. And then they lean on their leaders, which is what we need to do to make sure that we're thinking about not just a blanket statement that doesn't work, but a blanket statement that we can say is our policy, but then we allow our leaders some flexibility in how to apply that works for their teams.
So kind of like what you were saying earlier about just, creating these moments is, so even with 60,000, 100,000 people, it's the same kind of concept?
Yeah.
You make it happen from the top down? Is that the idea?
It's hard to bring 120,000 people all together at the same time.
Yeah, it's a concert.
It's a really hard
It's a big rock concert. Let's say Taylor Swift, maybe.
Okay, Taylor, I love this plan. I think I'm going to recommend that to all my clients. Let's get Taylor Swift and do a concert. That would be the best. What I think is really hard is that we we don't have those moments to bring everyone together.
Yeah.
So how do you think about that? How do you think about that in a way that's sustainable financially for the company?
Right.
How do you make sure you're creating team collaboration and in person? So it does take a lot of work to think through that and how you do it well. And every company is different in how they've decided to structure this. But, no matter what we do with a large company, we've got to keep some lenses on there of how we do this in a broad way.
But like, well, whether you have 5 people, 10 people, or you have 100,000 people, doing this culture work is
Essential.
that significant.
Yeah.
But it doesn't get prioritized.
Not enough. I would love it to be prioritized all the time because culture is the foundation for everything we do. We cannot have a high-performing organization without culture as the foundation. And too many times we don't focus on it.
I know you talk about this in your book.
Me too.
What are the reasons why it doesn't happen, and what's that shift that needs to happen?
Yeah, well, the reason that I wrote this book is because we developed a model, and I really wanted organizations to have a roadmap of how do you really think about team health and culture and have the factors that we understand from our research world and all the evidence that we've accumulated over the years. How do you have a model to show how these things actually come together? Because what I was seeing in the workplace is a little bit of whiplash around culture, which was like the flavor of the week where a leader would read a book and they're like, oh
my God.
let's focus on trust. Oh, wait, radical candor. Now let's focus. And people are like, wait, I don't know what skill to focus on and I don't know what we're doing next. And
Everybody has that moment.
yes, right? And everybody is worried about the book their leader's going to read next because they're like, oh, that's going to be the next program. So the great news is like all this research, it all fits together beautifully. And I felt like we needed a model not only to show how it all fit together, but then how to measure and track it. Because what you measure, actually you get to impact. As you know, Peter Drucker is somebody I deeply admire his work. And he talks about this, like you can't impact what you don't measure. And so we wanted a measurement tool to go with the model so people could figure out where are we doing really well from a culture perspective? Where do we need work? And then how do we focus on those areas one step at a time, understanding how they all impact one another?
Wow. How do you measure that? Like, and what are you measuring exactly?
Yeah, so the 5 C's is our model.
Yeah.
And so we have multiple sub-factors within the big factor structure. And this took a ton of research and work. I mean, it just getting what we call items, the questions that we're asking people about their team health or their organizational health, it takes time. So we started with a huge question set, and we started with a question set that was from the scales that were already validated around all of the science. And then we had the great joy of partnering with psychometricians and psychologists all over the world to really distill this down. We got it down to 7 minutes, which is pretty cool.
Gosh.
7 minutes to take this, really get a beautiful roadmap of like, okay, where are your strengths? Where are your opportunities? And what's the distribution of data so that we can take that data. And I like to say, like, have the quantitative data so that we can have the qualitative conversation. So
I see.
the conversation matters so deeply, but having the data behind the conversation allows us just to get to a different richness.
It's not just vibes.
It's not just vibes, right? That's why we developed it, but it did take a ton of work. And we were really fortunate because not only did we do the academic research, but we had an organization and a big, large public company say, we want to do research with you. And they allowed us not only to do research within the organization, but also confidentially to have access to some of the outcome data that we needed to study in the process to come down to this model and the assessment tool.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
To some extent, it is the vibes, but you have that scientifically backed. And I think that's what will actually get people to do it, to adopt these ways of being. So amazing. So when it comes to culture, do you think it's broken because of people, leaders, institutions, our society, politics, like?
Yes.
All of it. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, humans are complicated.
Yeah.
It's simple.
Yeah.
There are foundational needs that we have as people, the need to be seen, the need to be heard, acknowledged. We have a need. We talk about self-determination theory, and we talk about, what motivates people. And it's, relatedness, it's competency, it's autonomy. So they're just foundational needs that we understand. That's why I think, sometimes my job is more simple, is because we all have these foundational needs. I have a need for us to be connected. We all have that. But the layers that we put on top of that and the systems we exist in are very complex. And so that's why I say I feel like my job is simple and really complicated. And so it's a little bit of both. And one of the things that I think about a lot is when I'm looking at culture and I'm looking at things, I want to get down to the foundational need that might not be being served. When I'm doing conflict work with people, it always comes down to a foundational need of one or both people, or if it's a conflict with teams, it's, something is happening between these two teams, and it's always down to a foundational need that's not getting served. And so that's how I think about culture, is like, how do we really get back to the humanness of us, the needs that we have as people to thrive in the workplace? And when we approach it with that, then we're kind of looking at both the system and the people simultaneously.
It's so like, because I remember sometimes when I have conversations with you and you're telling me about a story, I'm like, so you're teaching them to be human?
Yeah, I know. We talk about that all the time.
So it's like, but it makes sense because there's so many layers that just get added on to day-to-day life of masks and layers. And I can't say these emotions at work. Like,
right. Well,
you be vulnerable, not
all of that. Sometimes I wish we could do a better job with each other. And obviously this comes from like a deep place of connection and care. But imagine if, like, when we were feeling insecure, we could just say to each other, hey, so I'm feeling insecure right now. And here's what's going on for me. And I'm just curious, like, what's going on for you right now? But that's like the kind of conversation that would be so powerful. But instead of saying like, this is what I'm feeling, we start doing like all different kinds of things. I always say some of us like to peacock when we're feeling insecure, and some of us like to retreat. That's so true. And some of our worst behaviors come from those moments of insecurity. So what if, and I'm just using insecurity as an example, what if we could actually tell each other these things? Because we all have those moments. We're human. We have moments where we don't feel as confident. We don't, the saboteur, the self-critic has gotten a hold of us. Imagine a workplace where we got to say that out loud.
It seems like it would make for a really good, connection. Like, it would ultimately lead to better connections.
Yes.
Do you think it can actually happen? Like, I love the idea. I think it should be like that.
I know.
But can it actually happen?
To that level, no. I mean, because we have to have trust and care and safety in order to do that. And workplaces, unfortunately, we can keep moving in that direction. But do I ever believe we're going to get into a utopic work environment? I mean, I believe deeply in positive organizational psychology. And I like to say I believe in realistic optimism, not delusional optimism. Delusional optimism is that we're going to have a utopic society. We're too complicated as people for that. So no, I don't think we're ever going to get to that utopic type of environment. But when we focus on people and we focus on culture, we get closer and closer to what it looks like for humans to flourish and thrive in the workplace.
Yeah, I mean, not to get philosophical, but I think you're right. Like, it can't just swing and just, utopia, everything's bliss.
Let me share my entire self with you. It's just not realistic.
That's like happen. But the other way actually makes for more entertainment, more education. Like, you learn more, you experience more, and I feel like that's kind of the joy of life.
Is learning and growing every single day. I agree.
I love that.
If you've enjoyed this conversation with AJ Kumar, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you're listening to this on any podcast platforms, please give us a follow. My book, Connected Culture, is out now, so please grab a copy.